So, on this episode of Adapted to AT, where we take concepts from all over business, entrepreneur, mindset, leadership, development, and try and apply them to the athletic training profession, we are talking about the persuasion knowledge model. And really, this is one of those things that I think intuitively everybody probably understands, but when you really just dig into it, it helps, I think, expand where you are thinking about and how you are thinking about how you approach different aspects of your communication. So really, this is focusing on the understanding of how individuals process and respond to persuasive messages and information. A lot of the things that athletic trainers and healthcare providers in general do on a day-to-day basis. In athletic training specifically, it really applies to how a patient's knowledge, skepticism, and responses impact the athletic trainer and patient relationship and ultimately the overall outcomes. So first, talking about patient education. Patients come in with varying levels of knowledge, and this is something that I've learned even more so working in the clinic that I'm in now with a surgeon, and that, some of the things that we see on a daily basis is just what we see. It's what we do. Talking about a surgery to us is just part of the job and something that happens on a daily basis. Patients don't always come in with that mindset, and they really can get caught off guard if you just throw out the idea of a surgery to them when that wasn't something that crossed their mind, either in their own research or just the fact that they had never even thought about it before. And so you really need to assess and adapt your education, recognizing that each patient has their own unique experience. Patients possess their own, quote, persuasion knowledge based on those experiences, and we really need to take that into consideration. This is a tough thing when it comes to practice, and that, as an athletic trainer, you probably have things that to work, or at least are highly effective on a regular basis, and those are the go-tos that we always use because they seem to get results. But part of that evidence-based tripod or that continuum is really still being open and listening to what the patient is telling you based on their own expectations and their experiences. Somebody had a really bad experience with any modality. It could be anything. Even if you know it to work and you think it could in a situation, it's going to take some convincing, if you will, to get that patient to be okay with that and get on board. And that takes patience and really figuring out how and when to go and do that. And you also got to go through, what that patient wants to know. Some people with a background, whether it's in healthcare or if they're in school and are going into a healthcare related degree program, may want the down and dirty details of absolutely everything. Other patients just tell me what I need to do, what's going to happen, and that's all I need. And really, we got to make sure that we're taking that into account. And hey, even ask it if you need to. It will help you. Some ethical considerations, they need to be informed, provide the consent, and well-being must be a top priority. Again, everything that we should know, and most everyone does, but it needs to be open with clear explanations and the scientific evidence to help address doubts. It can be really hard to convince people of something if they get their mind to it, but trying to do that through all of the possible ways with the evidence and what is needing to happen, and really getting into the nitty-gritty of describing what's happening. One issue that we tend to run into, and by we I mean the surgeon I work with, is patient access to information is greater than it ever been before, both their own personal and also just with reading things online or wherever they may find a resource. So our patients will often get an MRI, get the radiology read of that MRI before they ever see the doctor again for a follow-up or the surgeon for the next consult. And that can be a great thing because they have all of their information and nothing's being hidden from them. But it also can be a tough thing because the radiology report may read in more detail than what is actually being presented when you tie the exam, the physical exam, to the subjective history, to the radiographic exam. And that can cause a lot of confusion for parents. Patients, parents too. But you really got to make sure that we're paying attention to that and being open to that and answering questions and explaining why when something says an impaction fracture, that has a lot of different meanings depending on who is reading that report from the MRI and what it means to the surgeon when they're examining the knee, because people see fracture and rightfully so, red lights go up, alarm bells go off. And so being sure to explain all of that and doing so thoroughly so the patient feels good about it will help with that persuasion about what your outcome and your plan is from here on. So things, again, we got to pay attention to motivation, prior experiences, the context of their activity in their life, and then making sure we're customizing the individual needs that they have based on what we see, because not everything is the same. We have the debate with our surgeon of, was the age cutoff for replacing an ACL or reconstructing it? Is there one? Well, there's a lot of factors that go into that, and I think that's when a surgeon can lay all that out and take in the patient's desire as well to really make the most impact and really gain that persuasion to help get them to the place that we want to get them. So really, making sure we're recognizing this, letting the patient be an active participant in what's going on, hearing what they're saying, not going in with preconceived notions. That can be really hard. I've seen that in the clinic. You go through and you read notes and from previous providers, from messages that are sent in by the patients, and you can get a picture of what you think you're walking into and make assumptions that ultimately hurt you in the back end because it's not the case on that day. And we've run into that quite a bit, and I think it's important to make sure that you don't do that. It's good to have as much background knowledge as you can. It's harder in other settings. Obviously, if a athlete or patient just walks in to see you and you never seen them before because they've never been hurt, you got to put it all together, and you do that along the way. But making sure that you are allowing them to be part of that and being informed in the decision-making process really impacts this persuasion knowledge model. And the relationship is ultimately a partnership. Yes, you're there. Yes, you're helping make the calls, but really you got to take into account what the patient is comfortable with as well, and that is extremely important in that process. And so bottom line, coming from this, meeting your patients where they are, putting all of those pieces together to help ensure that you're really going to get the best outcome for everybody involved is really going to be key in this whole thing. So again, I think it's one of those things we intuitively know, but I think when you really sit down and think about it, it can open your eyes up to some situations that maybe that isn't how it went and you would like to do it over. And so if you can go in with that mindset, you can have a lot better outcomes for both yourself and for your patients. So this is another Adapted AT, and we will catch you on the next one.